Hey guys and gals, it's me, E.H. Ivins, the dad you wish you had, your Uncle Herbie, for another edition of the Dad You Wish You Had podcast. Okay, today's question comes from a young woman named Keisha, and Keisha asked me this very, very simple question because she's in conflict with her parents, frankly. Now, Keisha is, I surmise, she did not share her age with me in the question, but I surmise that Keisha is in her early 20s, and her parents are pushing her hard in career, and she's getting married, and she's conflicted about the value that career brings her. In other words, her question was, does my career reflect who I am and my worth as a person? It's a great question. So, and I slightly paraphrased the question, but that's pretty much exactly it. So here we are. And this is a very common question. People get real tied up in what they do, and it becomes a big part of who they are. And to pretend that it isn't, to say some touchy-feely, dreamy, let's go off and hug the sunflowers and stare at the sunset and say, career means nothing, that would be a lie, okay? Career means a lot. But at the very same time, it's not everything. So let me back up and give a little broader perspective, if I might, particularly as career relates to women as opposed to men. And there is a difference between how career relates to women as opposed to men. And this is not going to be necessarily politically correct, but I'm not going to be inflammatory either. I'm just going to state what are the obvious truths, and then if you want to argue with me, of course, feel free. Right above my head, by the way, is the link, MYOTHERDAD, to text me your questions, as Keisha has, and I will answer them in future podcasts. Just text your question to me. It remains anonymous. Obviously, I didn't tell you where Keisha lives or her last name. I will never do that. And if you ask me in the question not to even use your first name, I won't do that. Whatever makes you happy. I'm here to answer your questions as the dad you wish you had. So use the information above me and dial the 844 number, which is a weird exchange, isn't it? And anyway, text your questions to MYOTHERDAD and I will answer them. Okay, so let's get back to Keisha and her career. Now, there is a difference between men and women. I hate to say it, but it's true. So just a little history. If we go back into the history of civilization, okay, since when I say civilization, Western civilization, I am ignorant, frankly, on some of the African civilizations and, some of the Asian civilizations, but here in the Western civilizations where we live, and even though there are many people living with us that originally their families or they came from Asian or African cultures, they're here now. So we're all living in a Western European culture, basically. Okay, I realize there's some fringe on this, but basically we live in a Western European culture. And if we turn the clock all the way back and we start with the very beginnings of Western culture and we go back to ancient Egypt and we come through Greece and we come through Rome and all the many civilizations around it, the Great Persian Empire, so on and so forth, Babylon, etc., etc. I'm not going to do a history lesson, but if we go through all of them, the common theme has always been, up until the present, men provide, women take care of the children. Now look, I'm not suggesting this as a misogynist role model for women. I am not suggesting turning the clock back to where women can no longer work and earn the same as men. But let's discuss the broader societal impacts and how this affects Keisha and her feelings about career and where it brings her worth. And the answer I would give, by the way, to a man is going to be different than the answer I'm going to give to Keisha in some ways. In many ways the same, but in some ways different. But anyway, I digress. I'll let some man ask me the same question and I'll answer it for him at some other point. Let's talk about Keisha. Now, until the 1960s in this country, and all the way from the dawn of civilization until the 1960s here in America, we had essentially the same model as the rest of Western civilization. Men went to work, women stayed home. When I was a little boy, my stepfather went to work. He was a produce broker. We lived in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. A produce broker is the middleman between the grower and the grocery store or the restaurant of fresh produce. That's what he did. That's how he supported the family. And he was able to support our family very nicely. We were upper middle class. We lived in a nice home in a nice suburb. I went to good schools. My sister and I both went to good schools. We had pretty much anything we wanted. We had a privileged background, and we grew up. And my mother always had housekeepers, etc., etc. We lived if you ever watched the television show Mad Men, we almost lived that lifestyle without the drama. Okay, we had other dramas, by the way, but not that drama, if you've ever watched that show. So anyway, and that's how life was. But beginning in the 1960s, we began experiencing something in this country that we hadn't before. And this gets a little bit into economics, but we began to have a lot of inflation. Now, I'm not here to discuss economics with you, but what inflation has done is it's decreased the power of the dollar to such an extent that today it takes two incomes to live as well as when I was a kid on one income. So women by necessity, if not by choice, have had to move into the workforce. And so today it is much more common that women work than not. Both of my daughters work, as an example. My ex-wife works, as an example. So it's very, very, very common that women work, and obviously women should get equal pay for equal work, which, by the way, they do. You know, figures lie and liars figure, and there's a lot of statistics. You can monkey with statistics, and that's another discussion for another day. But in fact, if you take away the extraneous factors like stopping to have children and stepping out of the workforce or only working, when you adjust it for all the different factors that affect men and women differently, men and women do in fact make the same thing for the same work, which is a great thing, and have equal opportunity. I am extremely proud of my daughters, one who's in software, the other one who's in the creative arts. She's an actress and a singer and a songwriter and a playwright. She does a lot of really cool things. By the way, she was in a terrific one-woman show this week in Atlanta. It was awesome. But anyway, I digress. So, those of you, by the way, watching me in Atlanta, check out the Aurora Theater. It's called Barbara's Blue Kitchen. It stars Chloe, my daughter. Check it out. You can go online to get the link. It costs $30. It's something that it's a COVID design. It really is great. I kid you not. And yes, I blatantly promoted my own daughter's production. But anyway, that's the way it goes. Anyway, I'm very proud of my daughters. I'm glad they're doing this. But and my eldest daughter, Lindsay, has been married and divorced. My youngest daughter, Chloe, is in a wonderful relationship with a guy that I love, and is probably going to get married and have children. And she's going to have to Lindsay has a son, my grandson, Hunter, and Chloe's going to have to make the same decisions Lindsay did to balance work and family. And, where does her worth come out? This is all at the root of, Keisha's question. Keisha's in her early 20s, just starting out. She's more where Chloe is, and she's asking, basically her question boils down to where's the balance in life? How much importance should I put on career versus family? And the answer is, if you want healthy children, then you can't have your rear end in two saddles and ride them both well. That's an old saying, but it's true. And I cleaned that up. If I were to use Yiddish, I'd say you can't have your tuchus in two saddles and ride them both well, but you can't. You've got to decide what you're going to be, primarily a mom or primarily in business. If your decision is to ultimately get married and have children and be primarily a mom, that's going to affect your career to a great extent, as, by the way, it should. There's no such thing as a free lunch. You can't make a decision without a consequence. You can't decide that I'm going to go to law school, let's say, and become a lawyer and work really, really hard and try to rise to partner at the same time thinking you're going to pay a lot of attention to your children. If you're going to do that, my suggestion would be to marry a man for whom career is not important, because when it comes to raising children, and this is a slight digression from your question, and I know, Keisha, that you don't have children yet, but let me just say that there's, a lot of people who get all wrapped up in career are always talking about quality versus quantity time. Since they can't spend the quantity of time with their children, they try to make it quality time. I'm here to dispel that myth. There is no such thing. There is no such thing as quality time. There is only quantity time. Your children will not remember how attentive you were when you showed up to watch the play or the game. They'll only remember that you showed up. And one of the things I can say proudly with all four of my children is, I always showed up. My wife always showed up, okay? You got to show up for everything and make that a priority. And that now brings me around back to your question, Keisha, which is, how important should career be? Let me answer it in a couple of different ways with analogies, okay? Well, I don't know if that's the right word, or metaphors. On your last day on earth, when you, and I too, when the day, I'm going to be a lot sooner than you, when we're lying on our deathbeds, I am 99.9999999% sure that our last thought will not be, I wish I could have worked more. Okay, I'm just certain of that. Your last thought will be, I wish I would have spent more time, if you have regrets, and maybe, and God willing, you don't. But if you have any regrets at all, it's going to be regretting that you didn't spend more and better time with your children and have a better relationship. It's so common that it's the rule. So the bottom line is, how important is your career? Important, but it's not where you should derive your worth. Your worth should be derived on what kind of children you produce at some point down the road if you decide to get married. Now, because that's why we're here. Our biological imperative, put aside, just for a moment, put aside whether you're religious or not, or which one you belong to, or any other questions aside. Put that aside. You are here on this earth, whether by evolution or whether by God. You are here to have children and raise them to be even better than you are. That is the prime directive of life. And if along the way you could enjoy yourself, the way you enjoy yourself is to enjoy yourself with your children. So if you place too much emphasis on career, you're going to necessarily destroy that time that you spend with your children and family, and that's going to impact the quality of your life. And that's why people are dropping Prozac like candy. The reason there are so many depressed people, I believe, in this country, so many people wrestling with their worth, so many people wrestling with, are they doing the right thing? Are they working hard enough? Are they achieving enough? Is because we put entirely too much emphasis on career and entirely too little emphasis on family. We need to return to the traditional values, not to say, when I say that, I don't mean return to the misogynistic ways of penalizing women and paying them less and treating them like playthings and like something out of Mad Men. That's not what I'm talking about, okay? I am a feminist. I am a proud feminist. But when I say that in the context of women should have every opportunity to do everything that a man does, but she cannot forget that she is a woman. Keisha, you cannot forget that you are a woman. And if you are like every other woman I've ever known in my life with I can count the exceptions on maybe two fingers. You, at some point, even though at 21 years old, that your clock may not be going off yet, soon, in the next few years, your baby clock is going to go off. It doesn't matter if you're gay or straight, your baby clock is going to go off. And when it does, you're going to want to have a family. And when that happens, it becomes a no-brainer, okay? So there are going to be trade-offs involved. Unless you're lucky, unless you're, Ivanka Trump, you're not going to have the option of being rich and have a child. You might have to do without some things, do without some accomplishments. And that's going to mean ignoring what other people are doing, because most of the people are wrong most of the time. In other words, if you have a friend, Keisha, that's really, really high achieving, I promise you in other parts of her life, it's not so great. And there's a trade-off there. So if you want to be truly happy in your life, if you want to truly live a fulfilled life, if you want to live a life of meaning, if you want to leave behind the world better than you found it, the best way you can do that is to involve yourself in children and family. And that's going to mean the sacrifice of career. And that's going to primarily fall upon you as a woman. Again, I don't write the rules. I simply observe them. You can't ignore the span of civilization. There is a biological imperative why the men who are physically stronger, okay, are the providers, and women are the child rearers. Again, that's just a reflection of biology. I am not saying anything else. Okay, please don't read into my words what I'm not saying. Let's not play that game. We're not running for office here. We're just talking about what's going to make you happy. What's going to make you happy, Keisha, as a woman, biologically, is immersing yourself more in family than career. And so you should, no matter what anyone else tells you, it is not a competition. You are not competing with your sisters or your friends or your mom or your next door neighbors. The only measure of success will be in the kind of family ultimately you get involved in and produce. So right now at 21 years old, while you're growing your career and before you get married, great. Push, do what you have to do, sacrifice all you want, work as hard as you want. But when the day comes that you decide to have a family, it must become secondary. Okay, so that of course points to another, and we could go on and on about this, it's really funny. Years and years ago, I wrote a book in 1999, and I'm not getting off subject. I wrote a book, a nonfiction book called How to Get Filthy, Stinking Rich and Still Have Time for Great Sex. True story. You can still buy it on Amazon. Now, here's the thing about that book. It was a metaphor, and the metaphor was no matter how hard you work and no matter how much money you make, you can still make time for family. People knew, so here I am as a man, not a woman, but I like to think of myself as a feminized man in a very positive way. And so my staff knew, for example, that if one of my children called from school, if they couldn't get a hold of my wife and they needed me to come to school to get a child, or a child was sick, or a child needed me, for whatever reason, serious or completely flippant, I would interrupt any meeting I was in, cut off anything I was doing, no matter how important it might be, to be with that child. And my children today, my adult children ranging from 26 to 42 years old, will all foretell you that they knew that if they called upon me, I would drop what I was doing. And I was a very high-powered executive in those days. I was self-employed. I had a big company. It was millions and millions and millions of dollars, lots of employees, lots of responsibility. And yet I would drop it at a moment for the children, and I have no regrets about that. None whatsoever. Because in the end, no one's going to care about. I'm not even going to share what the company was or what the company did or what happened. It's not important. It's just money. And since when is that important? Money and titles, blah, 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 blah. It's going to come down to your immortality. Now, again, we're going to come back a little bit to religion and secularism. Look, your immortality, whether you believe in heaven or you don't, a big part of your immortality is going to be in the memory you leave with your children. And after you die, okay, I'm going to tell you exactly what's going to happen on the day you die. After you die, everyone's going to go to Denny's for breakfast. They're going to go to the funeral. Everyone's going to have a good cry. The sun's going to rise the next day, and they're all going to talk about you over breakfast. And that conversation, what do you want them to be talking about? How great mom was, and how she always had time for us, and how she was always there for us, and how she, fixed every boo-boo and soothed every slight and was just there to hug you no matter what, and always made time for you despite her career. Or mom was the president or the executive vice president of XYZ Corp. Isn't that great? What does that do for your family? Nothing. So, sum it all up. How important is career? It's important, but only insofar as it helps support the family. It has no value insofar as you being a human being. So if you want to be truly happy in your life, be truly happy with your family and your children. And that's the prerogative you should concentrate on. Okay, that's enough for today. I'm going to wrap it up. Before I go, make sure that you click on the subscribe button. Make sure you click on the notification button. Please share this with your friends. We're at the very, very beginning. We have less than 10 videos up, but I promise I'm not going to quit. There's going to be a lot of videos. So please share this and share the dad you wish you had with your friends, because it's a great, I hope that you agree, it's a great resource for you to get your questions answered. And don't forget, right above my head, once again, text my other dad at the number above. I did not memorize it, so I'm not going to repeat it, but you can read it. You're a smart person. Anyway, get the number, text me your questions. I'll answer them in future episodes. I'll be doing 2 a week, hopefully forever, every Tuesday and every Friday. I'll record. They may probably go up on Wednesday or Thursday. But anyway, it's not important. Twice a week, every week, forever. Videos are going to go up, and I'm going to answer your questions. And until next time, I hope you enjoyed this session. And until next time, this is E.H. Ivins, the dad you wish you had, your Uncle Herbie, saying so long.